I'm going to go ahead and start sharing screen.
All right.
Well, we've introduced ourselves for those who are coming in to the recording now. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And we're going to start talking about legal education and integrative law. Let's see. And of course, somebody has just rung my bell.
I wonder if it's your missing package.
There we go. Can you see my screen?
We can.
I don't know why it's not.
Is this the normal?
There we go.
There we go. Great.
Okay. So
if anybody has a question, just speak up, because if we might miss you when the slides are up.
So here is just the reminder about the integrative law movement, but since you're all very familiar with it, and anybody listening to the recording has probably attended another event, I'm just going to remind us of that we're talking about the garden, or if the case may be, we're talking about pieces of the elephant. And so this piece is about the teaching of integrative law. And it's so interesting that two of you are from South Africa. So what the story about what's been going on in South Africa is back during the pandemic, I was invited to prepare a reader. And Neetu Shetty actually created the curriculum from the reader for Varsity College. I trained the lecturers, and then it was taught at 8 law schools in South Africa in 2021. Then in 2022, I actually went to South Africa, where I spoke at the Southern Africa Law Teachers Association conference, and then also at the campuses of Varsity College around the country. And what had happened there was there's been an expanded interest. So there are new projects in other law schools, and there are 2 South African focused textbooks being compiled. The one from Judah and one from the University of Joburg. And then we also did a speaking tour and events in September. And do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to let you know that Neetu is actually one of my heads of law, and she's the one who actually spoke to us on Integrative when I started my law career. So it's so lovely knowing that you are actually one of the ones that trained her.
Neetu is a very strong advocate for integrative law. She's currently working at Stellenbosch, doing digital training, but she's one of our strongest proponents. Wonderful friend. And so then there's the Quinnipiac story, and Carrie, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the Quinnipiac story.
Well, I had met Kim around the same time that Lawyers as Peacemakers came out. So she and I were familiar with each other, and my current dean, had even taught a course using Kim's book. So she was known to other people at our school as well. And then as things progressed and Kim wrote her second book on lawyers as change makers, she asked me to write a chapter on what we should be teaching in law school. So that was the first time about integrative law. So that was in about 2014, 2015, I think the book came out. And the first time I had actually sat down and written out what we should be doing. Now, candidly, we weren't doing it yet at our law school. And I didn't believe there was any, at least US law school, that was doing much yet. But fast forward to 2020, when Kim, as we like to say, got grounded and could not travel the world, Kim called me up and said, I am doing trainings and I would really like to try teaching law students this while they're in law school. Could we make it into a clinic? So we got a clinic created and approved and taught in the summer of 2020 a virtual clinic that Kim taught with a young lawyer who was at the time in New York City. And we had some interesting challenges to overcome in just figuring out how to deal with the ethical issues of multi-jurisdictional, which we did quite well. But my faculty, because we were rushing it through, approved it as an experiment for just that summer. At the time, it was conscious contract work. You're going to hear more about it. And then in the fall of 2020, we reported out on what had happened, and it got approved in an open-ended long-term way. We did change the name to really focus more on its location in the ADR curriculum. So it's called the Negotiation Clinic rather than the Transactional Clinic, because we were going to be swimming against the current a little more in our business curriculum, who were people who had not heard of the integrative law movement, as opposed to the ADR community who had heard. So it's kind of like stay in your own lane, and people, and at least in my law school, are happy to have you experiment and do creative new things. We did that for approximately a year. Kara taught in it, Kim taught in it, Jacqueline Harani taught in the curriculum. And one of the I'll say now, we're going to talk about the clinic, but most recently what we did was add a prerequisite in integrative law, which students have to take if they're going to do the clinic, but can take even without doing the clinic. So we're going to describe those more. But at the time, we then decided to create the project on integrative law in legal education, not as the exclusive place, because as you heard, already work was being done in South Africa, but more as a project that could be populated at other law schools. So far in the US, we are the only one. But the reason why I think we were just ideally situated is here is a picture of our current dean. And we asked her when we launched our project on integrative law and legal education, this is the quote she gave us for our website about what we are trying to do here at Quinnipiac, educating the whole lawyer to understand and serve the whole client. She is incredibly serious about that. She speaks to every law student throughout their time here about it. And she talks about your head, your heart, and your guts. She was the creator of our Center on Dispute Resolution. So as Desiree David was saying earlier, this, getting away from the win-win mentality. But given that we have been doing mindfulness work, doing client-centered work, teaching our law students how to contextualize the client's legal problems, to understand the other non-legal consequences. Her conclusion is that, as you've seen highlighted here, integrative law pulls all of this together in ways that are simultaneously challenging, inspiring, and affirming for our students. So she is a 100% behind building this even more into our curriculum. But right now, I would say we have two courses, a simulation course and the clinic, that are labeled integrative law, but there's our mediation clinic and other of our lawyering courses that are in the integrative law world, although we don't use the term. So that is the story of its birth at Quinnipiac. It's here as long as we have integrative lawyers who want to come teach it.
And I have a pipeline of people that are being trained. Kara is going to be the lead teacher coming up in the fall, and has been the lead teacher in the clinic that we just finished. And when I say fall, our autumn, the spring down under here. So, Carrie, this one's yours too.
Oh, it is. It is, right. Sorry. So
that's okay.
What we are doing is several things, and Kara sometimes talks about these. So if I forget anything, Kara, speak up. But the first thing we're doing is helping students shift their mindset from the adversarial to the collaborative approach, which we do in other ADR related courses. So that in and of itself is not, unique to what we're doing in these particular courses, including all of our negotiation classes are taught that trust, etc., and responding to client interests, not just positions, is the key to it. But we are much more transparent and clear that we are talking about not just solving the problem, but helping parties align their vision, their mission, their values. Because here we're talking about, by doing conscious contracts, they are forming a partnership of sorts. It could be a capital P, like officially a partnership, or it could be just doing a project together. But these people are going to continue to work together, which is not true of every negotiated dispute. For example, you might settle a case where the parties are never going to talk to each other again. So this negotiation process goes more deeply into the values work, the vision work, the trust work. And the other aspect is that a piece of what our students do themselves, as you'll hear, as well as help the clients do, is to anticipate, sense, and respond to inevitable change and, frankly, inevitable conflict that will come up when they continue to do business together, whatever that business might be. So the students actually help the clients think through and plan a personalized, unique dispute resolution process. Another thing we are absolutely doing is helping the clients, the students and the clients as well, really tap into that right brain creative side of themselves to support and inform their analytical left brain. But that creativity is absolutely what we're trying to unleash, support, help our students learn that lawyers need to be creative and not to be shying away from that, because now they've added such distinct analysis. Think like a lawyer. They also need to create like a lawyer. And then finally, we've been framing it more and more as these are leadership skills. And those leadership skills include things that some people don't necessarily put on the list. So empathy, vulnerability, but all of which go to creating this strong sense of community and connectedness that is really the hallmark of successful leadership. So these are some of our learning outcomes, some of our goals as we go into designing the clinic.
So we have a lot of different pieces of the clinic. First of all, that it's virtual, and it will always be virtual. And that we started it as a virtual clinic, and that was, I think, part of the attraction of some of the people who signed up, is that they didn't have to worry about actually coming into class. But there's a piece of how do you communicate virtually? There's part of it. We start each class with a check-in. When we have, as we did with the one class, we had more than 20 people. We did it in small groups. If we have a small clinic, which the clinic we just did had 4 students, we do it as a whole class. But it's really just saying how are you doing. The structure we've used is, we call it the PIE structure, and we got that from Rhiannon Thomas, who got it from Women Within, a program that checks in. The P is physical, I intellectual, E emotional, and S spiritual. And so we check in how are you doing in all of those levels at the beginning of each class. We have a process where they negotiate for a grade. They basically have an A if they do everything, and if they are not willing to do everything, then they can negotiate for a lower grade. So far, nobody has asked for a lower grade, but the A is really theirs to keep or lose. And so they're not guaranteed of making the A, but they if they're starting to drop below an A, we have a meeting with them to actually discuss their progress and what they need to do to come back to that standard. We've actually had, in one case, a student in the middle of the semester decided not to do the thing that we said would restore his A, and then he made a B. The students are broken into firms, and this is true in the simulation as well as in the clinic, where they work in groups together as collaborators, and they create their own conscious contract with their firm. So they do that work of what are your values, and who are you, what's important to you, how do you work, how do you respond to conflict, how are we going to resolve conflict and address change. And so that's part of the course, is actually doing that as a student firm. And when those who go on to the clinic actually have clients from all over the world. We've had actually in South Africa, a group of law students served as our clients while they created an organization. We've had businesses, cooperatives. We've been, I think, about a dozen countries we've had clients. And in one particular client situation, there were six people creating an organization, and they represented, I think, 4 or 5 different countries. We have a well-being plan. We actually create what we did for the simulation courses. It's a 14-week course, and we created a theme for each week. And so if the theme was physical well-being or nature or whatever, then they did experiments on bringing that particular thing into their lives. And so they could do mindfulness, and they could do a walk in nature, or physical activity, whatever it was for the week, and try out which things worked for them. And then they created a well-being plan, and we'll actually see a couple of those shortly. And then they do journals. They do weekly reflective journals, and they track their habits. So they actually identify habits that they want to create and enhance, and they track those and they turn it in. We have a wheel of life, where they actually just measure certain areas of their life and kind of color it in a wheel, and we can see how they're doing. And we do that, I think, 3 times a semester. And then self and peer evaluations. And all of this is sort of in the context of autonomy. Kara, do you want to say anything else about autonomy? Because this was originally your slide, and I'm curious.
Yeah. No, the autonomy piece, I think, is it's really allowing them to understand that, or helping them understand that, they have, with this, a lot of autonomy that they have. And autonomy was one of the topics in the well-being mentor group, so we discussed that at length. Also comes, right, a lot of responsibility when they're starting to do the client work. And we empower them really to work with the clients. I don't know, this is probably going into the weeds, maybe a little bit too much of everything, but they actually meet with the clients by themselves. We, of course, we're supervisors, so we have them record the videos so that we watch those videos back to see how they're doing. But there's a lot of autonomy even with their interactions with the clients. And, the whole part of the course is really preparing them well for that as well. So really focused on reflective listening and listening skills, as well as asking, really transformative questions so that they can get into the self-reflective work that we have them do, and that they end up having the clients do, so that they can get to those vision, mission, and values. So that's the autonomy piece. Very autonomous, but that comes a lot of responsibility too. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the students are really surprised when they realize that we're not going in and holding their hands. We're sending them in to represent clients. And we will prepare them, but when they're the ones going into their virtual rooms, and they're in charge and they're creating their own agendas and things like that. So being on that hot seat really requires them to step up in a way that they might not have in other courses they've taken. So I mentioned that we have the pies. So one of the things we saw is that the predictable format helps to create a safe space. I actually think there's some neuroscience about that. And so we announce the agenda at the beginning of each session. We do the check-in. We discuss the weekly readings and material. We practice skills. We take a well-being break, which is just like a 5-minute break most of the times. Once in a while, we'll have somebody come in and do some exercise, and then we introduce new materials and homework. And we keep the same class agenda every time so that they can predict what's going to happen. We're not here to have one of those gotcha moments of, we're not, going to surprise them with something that they didn't see coming. So they are, we mentioned that they're doing their own conscious contracts document. So they do their own touch tone, and the ACED is what we call the addressing change, engaging disagreement, which is designing a dispute resolution system inside the relationship. So they really put theory into practice, and create their own conscious contracts model in their firm before they actually go do it with clients. Now, the other thing that's really unusual is that we do a closing ceremony, and it's one of the things they learn there is about appreciation, acknowledgement, and closure. We give awards for things like, having attended every class, or being early, or always having the most insightful comments, or sometimes funny things. And we have the students actually nominate their classmates for awards, and they can even say what they'd like to be recognized for. And then I mentioned these well-being experiments. So we're going to show you some student work, and we have permission to share all of these. This one is actually a fairly simple touchstone. Sienna did something that had never been done before, which warmed my heart, which is why I'm showing this one. She took a picture of her and then used that as the backdrop. Now, we have our students, one of the first things they do is they learn to use Canva for design. That's another big piece of what we do is working with design. So this is her. This is who she is. Her vision is a world that fosters individuality and sustainability. Her mission is to love boldly and fearlessly, to always respect myself and others. And you see her values. Now, this is the sort of thing you can put as a poster on a bulletin board, and we recommend that the students use these to shape their lives and their decisions. It's also part of a conscious contract. I like this one because it's not Canva. She actually just painted a tree, and the simplicity of it, and the sort of, there's something about the originality of this one, Hannah Scott, that just really called to me.
Yeah,
this
and
is
you can
also
see that some students get intimidated by feeling they need to be superb artists or graphic designers, and in fact that's not true. They just need to be authentic, and
be authentic.
Authentically Hannah's work, and she was proud of it in beautiful ways, and it's a beautiful tree. I'm not saying she shouldn't be, but I'm just saying we do have some students who are like, oh my gosh, I don't have any artistic vision, and then they unleash it and do this amazing work.
It's amazing the creativity they find. This is one of the contracts for the group, and you can see the group touchstone here. and their values. And it's a 3-page kind of thing instead of 1 page like the others. The quote that they chose: "I raise my voice not so I can shout, but so that those without a voice can be heard. We cannot succeed when half of us are held back." So this is, as a law firm, in this case they call themselves a mediation firm, this is who they are, and part of the conscious contracts process. This is how they address change and engage disagreement, how to call a conversation, how to check whether their action plan is working, how to have the conversation. So sometimes these addressing change and engaging disagreement clauses are very long, and we'll see one that's unique in just a few minutes. Some of them are shorter. This is one of the well-being plans. And these are several pages that we put onto one slide. It's actually, there are other pages to this. We had 14 weeks. So this is Lauren's, right? Yeah. So Kara said yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
good.
so she actually took each week and reflected on the topic of the week. So you can see what some of the themes were. In week 6, curiosity, self-discovery, and healing. This week I journaled about what lights me up. I connected this exercise with the book I read for the reports, A Light Maker's Guide to Change. It's freeing to feel like it's not only my right, but my responsibility to do the things that make me happy and make the world better. For me, this includes taking care of my plants and connecting with people. So that's her reflection on that particular week's activity. And so then, she goes through the observations, and then she creates wellness strategies here in the last page. The things that worked for her, her commitment to herself. And this is a big assignment that goes over the whole semester. Oh, here's some more of her plan for the future. Things I will do at least 3 times a week to protect my wellness. So our hope was that they would create this plan that will follow them through the rest of law school and into their careers. They have a number of different experiments so that they can see what works for them and what doesn't, and then adopt what does. Here's another one. This is Emily, her well-being plan. Very creative. I won't let it go all the way, but I'll let you get a sense of it because I think it's about a 2-minute video. And then from that, Emily took measures that she tracked on her habit tracker.
Yeah.
So this is one of the contracts the students created. This is actually a partnership agreement between 2 real clients who have a business in New York, Full-Bodied Sound. And the colors they used were the colors of the organization, their web colors. And the pictures they used were the pictures of the actual people. And so I thought that I would just show you sort of the completed project when a clinic is finished, what it might look like. So they have their values, their purpose, their vision, their mission. This is not part of the process all the time, but people often put in either quotes or sort of principles or reminders. They call these reminders of things that if they were having a conversation, they wanted to ground themselves in. And a lot of times people, when they are about to have a difficult conversation, one of the things they do is they read their contract before they go into the conversation so they can remember who they are. they called what we call the ACED, they're addressing change, engaging disagreement. They asked for a candle conversation. They say that they call a candle conversation to empower the best versions of ourselves in order to encourage resolution. When there's a desire for an ACED conversation, the partner who is calling it will email or text their partner with the heading, asking for a candle conversation. They created levels so that if something is a level 1, it's urgent, urgent, urgent. We got to drop everything and have this conversation. Or a level 5 is, this might be worth a conversation, but it can wait. They created a ritual for lighting the candles together to be able to have a conversation that really honored their relationship. And
I love that.
Beautiful.
And this came from them. I know. Right?
Yeah, this was Nate and Anna, and who else was on their team, Kara? Do you remember?
Alan.
Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah, those were the students who did this.
Yeah.
Oops. So I'll sit here for a minute. Obviously we really like this one, that's why we're sharing it. But the students have created some amazing things that are like the most cutting edge of contracts. There actually was recently a LexisNexis sponsored program on the latest things in contracts and the latest trends, and design was the top thing that contract drafters ought to be paying attention to, and our students are learning that in law school. And if you want to see some of what clients say, the consciouscontracts.com has several videos of clients speaking, and one of the clients is Kimberly Weefling, and she was one of our clinic clients, and she said that she actually put her contract on the wall so that it's always there for her to see and remind her of who she is and why she does what she does. So these are not average contracts, and they are very meaningful to the people who enter into them and to the students who create them. Carrie, Jacqueline Harani, who we mentioned earlier, and I actually wrote an article about one of the early iterations of the course and clinic. By the time the article was finished and came out, we were a year into making changes, and then Kara and I are going to redesign the course again this summer for the next semester. But this article, which you can find at Washington University School of Law and Social and Law and Policy. The name of the journal is not on there, but we can send you the link if you want, if you can't find it.
Kim, I just put it in the chat for.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then that's us.
That's our presentation. Although I want to add something before we open it up. I excuse me, and enormously grateful and proud of what my colleagues, grateful to my colleagues and proud of them for going with the idea. Yeah, I plowed the earth so they could take seed here. But I haven't been creating the course, although we've talked about it, and I co-taught and answered a little bit here and there, and I've answered a question here or there, but it's just really the work product of a number of people, and most recently Kim and Kara, in building the course, etc. And the course says now, as we talked about, there is the mandatory prerequisite, which students can take, where, as you heard, they do this process themselves, and then they move on to the clinic. but for me, I shouldn't say but at all, and for me, the next level is how are we going to continue to have those who are really teaching integrative law and don't know it yet really connect themselves to this movement, number one. Number two, to think about what other courses we might develop and how we can bring the integrative law concepts into other courses. So one thing I will tell you all, and it's silly that I didn't tee this up, but so I'll just tell you, but one of the students who was in the fall, the new prerequisite course, chose not to do the clinic. For whatever reason, she was eager to do a more traditional externship. As it turned out, she continued to work with an integrative lawyer, but she chose not to do the clinic. So she is in our externship, which is an internship for credit course, where the seminar component, I do teach that, and it's fairly traditional. But what this lovely student, Bianca, did, and Bianca may someday hear this, so I wanted to, she's given me permission to talk about it, is use what she learned in the integrative law course to answer the questions and do some of the assignments in the externship semester. So for example, I have a fairly garden variety assignment on find a definition of professionalism that you like and talk about why you picked that one and what you expect. It's early in the semester. So what are you expecting to see in your placement? And I have people in all different kinds of placements: corporate, criminal, judicial chambers, legislative offices, traditional law firms, legal aid, you name it. My students can do it for academic credit in their second and third years. And Bianca's was extraordinary. She picked a quote unlike anything anybody had picked. She visually set it up because she's a very creative, artistic person in her soul. And she just said, well, I know that I can do it this way. It was a beautiful work visually, but also what she said. And she was challenging the sort of negative aspects of professionalism to say, I'm not going to be in a box. And she picked a quote that really was about freeing us as lawyers to do the work that clients need and not to push, not to force clients to be in our world, but for us to find what the clients need in theirs. And so that has, the fact that that happens so quickly and without me even assigning it or thinking about it, but I am so encouraged by what one semester of doing integrative law work in a semester while in law school can do to how this student who was only halfway through law school was reshaping. And Swetha, my guess is you're having a similar experience because you're integrating integrative law right into your DNA that is still being formed or in your professional identity. And so that is my next frontier, is how do we bring this, the profession is still changing and some of my students will go into very traditional settings, but instead of being chased away or giving up, how do they bring their own new consciousness and frankly demands for a healthier way to be a lawyer? I think we will change the profession even more quickly when we bring it into law school. I also think we have a duty. Integrative law was formed mostly by people who were experimenting out there as lawyers, and frustration and inspiration formed some of these ideas. So the fact that they exist, why would we continue to teach exactly what we've been teaching in the way we've been teaching without helping them already find this community of innovators and these people who have a different vision while people are in law school? To me, it's irresponsible. It would be like we taught constitutional law and didn't tell them about the newest rulings. Good or bad rulings, they need to know what is actually happening out there in the practice. So I am completely and utterly committed to being part of the movement to say this is each law school's responsibility to, like, how would you teach family law without saying, by the way, mediation and collaborative law is out there and has been for decades. To me, it's on that same level of obvious responsibility that we have as educators to prepare, and this is really where I come down to it, to prepare our students to enter the profession as it is, the good and the bad, the innovating and the traditional, so they will function and survive. At the same time, we are helping them have the vision for the future and a commitment to continue to revolutionize the profession. And why wouldn't we do that through the integrative law lens? So that's my mission. And I wanted to put that out there for posterity, as well as, and I should do my own touchstone about this. I have not updated my touchstone in over a year, and I shall do that. But I wanted to really say that's what I think is the next level, is as we begin to teach integrative law, whether it's a full-blown clinic or not, we now have prototypes for how to do it, and then we can begin to challenge every law school that they have a responsibility to be offering this at every law school. So I will get off my soapbox now.
I like your soapbox.
I thought you would, but